Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is our group learning program where each Sunday and Wednesday I come together with students, helping them to understand the path to enlightenment. We start our class with meditation, which I'll guide you guys in a session, but then afterwards I share a talk from this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. And each Sunday I go chapter by chapter in this book. This Sunday we're in chapter 17, which is titled Eliminating Fears. Are You Really Scared? So after meditation, I'm going to help you guys to understand how to eliminate fear. If you have fear of snakes or fear of spiders, fear of heights, even fear of your own death, this can all be eliminated, because by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have any fear in your mind. What the Buddha did is figured out how to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to that mental state, you don't experience any discontent feelings anymore. Fear and feelings like this that just don't exist in the mind anymore. So you don't have anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of this is eliminated from the mind through training the mind. So throughout this program, I've been helping students to be able to understand how to train their mind. And now we've gotten to a point with chapter 17 that we're going to specifically go in and talk about how to eliminate fear. So if there's fears that you have, we're going to be able to help you to be able to understand how to train your mind to get rid of those, because it's no fun walking around with fear. So if you'd like to join for meditation, which is an important part of the training, but there's other things too that you need. That's why I'm going to share some teachings with you after the meditation. You're welcome to join in with the meditation. The way that I start this is with some chanting to be able to ease into the meditation. And if you'd like to chant along, there's chanting sheets over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself and get a chanting sheet, because I'll be chanting those on the way into meditation. It actually helps you to get more benefit out of the meditation itself as you're chanting. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to help his students to commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or anything like that. There's none of those kinds of things in the teachings of the Buddha. If you're seeing rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer associated with his teachings, those are misunderstandings that people are having today. He never taught any of those kinds of things. He used chanting just as a learning tool or as a learning device. Today, we use it as a way to get more benefit out of the meditation. So if you decide to chant along, you'll be able to get more benefit out of the meditation. If you end up getting one of those sheets, you'll see that there's a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha in the chants, because we're going to be chanting in the Pali language, but there's English translations in there as well. And you're going to see that there's appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha built into these chants. And because of that, I don't think that the Buddha actually created these chants himself, because he wouldn't have walked around and said, "Here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me." This would be ego or arrogance if somebody did that. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings to the peaceful and joyful mental state that is enlightenment, and this teacher didn't want anything or expect anything from you, you might actually have appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that teacher too. The Buddha was just teaching out of the kindness of his heart, so the students would have really had a lot of respect for him. So you'll see that built into these chants, and that's why I think that this chants actually came from his students rather than him directly. And they were probably created either during his life or after his death. After the chanting, I'm going to be guiding you in the meditation. You'll hear me essentially teaching you and instructing you how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. But then there's going to be a period of time of quietness where we're just all meditating. Everyone here at the temple and anyone joining us online will just all be meditating at the same time. Now, during this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You'll probably hear a car go by, a dog barking, maybe a bird chirping. Someone here might cough or sneeze. This is all normal. If you're in meditation, craving permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you will cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. This is why you can eliminate these feelings, because it's the mind itself that is actually causing them. So if you're in meditation, understanding that the world is impermanent and things are constantly changing, when you hear a sound in meditation, you can be at ease. You can understand, like, yeah, this is the way that the world works, is that these sounds arise, they change, and then they fade away. So I'm sure you're going to hear sounds during meditation, and you can just be at ease, understanding that that's impermanence and that's normal. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand how to eliminate fear. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times as part of your journey to enlightenment. It's kind of like having a tool belt, and you would use these different tools at different times. So there's various classes, courses, and retreats that you can learn these different positions. But today, what I'm going to do is just introduce you to the seated position, because oftentimes that's where people are starting out and you might need some guidance on this. You can really sit however you like. So what I'm going to share with you are just suggestions or recommendations. There's not just one fixed way to sit, because if there was, that would be permanence, and we don't live in that world. Everybody's body is a little bit different. So you can use something that I'm recommending, or you can come up with your own too. As long as it's comfortable for you, that's all that matters. So you can just think about what I'm sharing with you in this case as suggestions or recommendations, because you'd like the body to be comfortable, not luxurious and not painful, but comfortable in the middle. So you could be sitting on the floor or in a chair. Maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or in a wheelchair. You can sit however you like. If you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This will kind of help soften your seat a bit. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, this is helpful if you just have them loose. If they're real tight, it can impede the circulation in the lower body and cause pain. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. The same thing's true for anybody who's in a chair or a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can also sit however you like. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair here with my legs crossed, so this is an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if this is erect. With the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. What meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation so that you can actively train it. Whereas if you were slouched like this, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid with the upper body, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because not only will it keep the mind attentive and alert, but it'll make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. I'm going to do some chanting again to ease into meditation. You guys are welcome to join in if you like, and then I'll come back in with the guidance afterwards. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Wat Tung Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso emakwa arahang samma sambuddho vicacaranang sammuno sakatoro kawitu anutero purisa dhamma sati satatawa manusang Bhutto Bhagavati. All right, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาโอตังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมโมโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good morning, everyone. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. What I'm going to do is help you guys to understand how to eliminate your fears. This is part of chapter 17 from our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. You know, it's no fun walking around with fear because when there's fear in the mind, you'll oftentimes make decisions through your fear, and that those decisions will produce unwholesome results for you. So by getting rid of your fear, it's actually a way of getting to better and better decisions that are actually going to produce more and more wholesome results in your life. Because whenever you base your decisions in fear, it's going to produce unwholesome results. So getting to a point where your mind is peaceful and joyful, where you can make wise decisions, is what's going to produce wholesome results in your life. The teachings of the Buddha aren't about a bunch of beliefs. You're not believing a bunch of things and hoping something good happens when you die. The Buddha didn't teach rules and commandments that everybody needs to follow. He also didn't teach rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer. He taught you to do this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development, training your own mind to get to the point where it's experiencing enlightenment. And an enlightened being wouldn't experience any fear whatsoever. The mind would have eliminated all the causes and conditions that are producing things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Oftentimes people think that these feelings are being caused by something external. You might think it's your mom and dad that are causing you to be angry or frustrated, or that it's your brothers and sisters that are frustrating you, or maybe you think your boss or your coworkers are annoying you. This isn't actually true. It's your own mind that's actually causing these feelings, and this is the reason why you can eliminate them. So in order to be able to help you eliminate your fears, I'm going to need to first help you to understand why you're experiencing fear. Because if you don't understand the cause of your fear, fear. When I explain to you the solution of how to fix it, it won't necessarily make so much sense. So I'm going to spend some time to help you to be able to understand what's causing these fears. And then as I go, I'm going to stop for questions at different times to be able to help you to be able to get clarification on anything that it is that I'm sharing. And when I get to the question period, if you have a question and you're here at the temple, we have microphones there in the middle of the room in the white bowl. If you could just get a microphone, take it back to your seat. If you press the gray button, you're going to see the lights come on. And if you hold this up to your chin, we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these microphones with you because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share the microphone with them. And then if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'd be helpful so that we don't get feedback through the speakers. Anybody who's online, if you guys have questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comments section, and I'll be able to see that. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like that way. So in order to understand how to eliminate your fears, you need to first understand what's causing it. So that's why I titled this chapter, Eliminating Fears. Are you really scared? Because you're not actually really scared. That's not the actual problem that you're experiencing. This is the symptom. The true cause of what's going on in the mind is much deeper. The fear is just helping you to see that there's a problem that's going on in your mind. And when you understand what the cause of this fear is, then you'll actually be able to fix it. So in this program, multiple times throughout this program, I've taught something called the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is a teaching that the Buddha shares as a very first teaching. Whenever he would teach brand new students, he would teach the Four Noble Truths first. Because in four simple statements, you can understand the problem in the mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. And you can learn this and understand it in a way that you can independently verify. The teachings of the Buddha, as I mentioned, aren't to be believed. You shouldn't believe anything that it is that I'm sharing with you, but instead you can learn, investigate, and examine what it is that I'm sharing with you. You can reflect on it to verify whether it's true or it's false, and then you can practice it, and you can see that it actually works to improve the condition of your mind in your life. So when I share with you today, I'm going to share with you just kind of briefly some teachings on the three universal truths and the Four Noble Truths, so that then we can move right into talking about the elimination of fears. Because now that we're in chapter 17, I've taught the three universal truths and the Four Noble Truths multiple times in this program. But I know many of you guys weren't here when I taught those things, so I'm just going to give you kind of a brief overview. But it's important, if you haven't learned this with me before, that you go back and you actually investigate this more deeply so that you can make sure that you understand this and that you've independently verified it. Because this is the very first teaching of the Buddha that's going to help you to understand what's causing not only fear, but all these other discontent feelings as well. And as I mentioned, I'm going to stop a few times and see what questions you guys have. So the three universal truths are like building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. Without understanding the three universal truths, you wouldn't be able to understand the Four Noble Truths. We call them the three universal truths and the Four Noble Truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true, and other people know that they're true. But you need to know that they're true in order to be able to benefit. So that's why you don't believe what it is that I'm sharing with you, but instead you independently verify it. So what the Buddha is doing here is he's not teaching you the way the world should be. He's teaching you the way the world is. And what he's explaining to you in this first universal truth is that the world is impermanent and things are constantly changing. You need to be able to independently verify this and see it for yourself, that there's something called conditioned objects that arise, that change, and fade away. That there's things that you see, that you hear, that you smell, that you taste, things that come in contact with the body, and thoughts and ideas that go through the mind. Everything in the world around you is constantly changing. These are called conditioned objects. They arise, change, and fade away. Then there's something called unconditioned objects. Unconditioned objects do not arise, they do not change, and they do not fade away. They are permanent. Enlightenment is that way, that it is permanent. When you get to the enlightened mental state, it's an unconditioned mental state. So the mind is experiencing the qualities of enlightenment permanently. And then the natural laws that the Buddha taught, those are not permanent as well. They're unconditioned. That's why his teachings are timeless. That what he taught 2,500 years ago is just as applicable today as it was 2,500 years ago, because it's these natural laws that haven't changed. They're unconditioned. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. But everything in the material world around you that you can see, hear, smell, taste, that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, it's all impermanent. And you need to be able to independently verify this because, like I mentioned, it's a building block to help you understand why you're experiencing fear and anger and sadness and all these other things. So what I encourage you to do is look around the world to be able to independently verify if what I'm sharing with you is true, because you're not interested in believing me. You need to be able to see for yourself. So ask yourself, is this body that you have permanent or impermanent? Right? If it's permanent, then that means it's always been the same your entire life. If this body is impermanent, then that means it's been constantly changing. Then when you see that, you look at your relationships and ask yourself, are your relationships permanent? Right? If their relationships are permanent, that means you've had exactly the same people in your life your entire life. If your relationships are impermanent, then that means you've had people coming and going in and out of your life. Ask yourself about your bank account. Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? Is it exactly the same balance all the time? Or does it go up and down and up and down? Or some people's goes up, up, up. Some people's goes down, down, down. What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? Right? We could go on and on and on like this, and you need to be able to independently see this for yourself. When you're walking down the street and you see a crack in the sidewalk, that's impermanence. You need to be able to remind yourself of that. Or if you see green leaves in the tree and brown leaves on the floor, on the ground, that is impermanence. You can remind yourself of that. So you can go around and independently verify that the world around you is constantly changing and is impermanent, which is a building block to help you understand the Four Noble Truths when we get to that. Then there's the second universal truth, which is discontentedness. This is where the Buddha explains to you what the unenlightened mind experiences. It's called conditioned feelings, where the mind is experiencing discontentedness, where the mind is shaken up. It's unsteady, it's uncalm. Now, some people refer to this as suffering. If you've seen other teachings, other teachers from other places, they might use the word suffering here. But I don't use this word because it doesn't accurately reflect what the Buddha was teaching. He describes how the unenlightened mind experiences pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. And these are conditioned feelings that, based on some condition, your mind then experiences a feeling. The pleasant feelings are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, or euphoria. It's very pleasant for you to experience that. Then there's painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. It's very painful to experience that. Then there's neither painful nor pleasant feelings. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's very painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category if you like. But shyness is a good example, that it's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant, right? Or say you were sitting on public transportation like a bus or something like that, and somebody walks in and they sit really, really close to you on this bus, and now your body's touching their body. You might say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. Right? The mind's kind of uncomfortable or displeased in this situation. This is neither painful nor pleasant. So this is what the unenlightened mind experiences, what's called conditioned feelings. So for example, if you look outside and you see it's sunny outside and you get really happy and excited about that, that's a conditioned pleasant feeling. That based on the condition that the sun is present, the mind is now experiencing happiness. But the problem with this is that if you form your happiness on something like the sun is not permanent. So therefore, your happiness is not permanent. This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness or permanent joy, because the mind is forming its inner feelings based on an impermanent situation, the sun. So now when it changes to rain, your mind experiences frustration or anger, or irritation. If you get really excited when your bank account balance is up here, well, that's not permanent. So if you get happy and excited based on that, when your bank account balance goes here, you'll be sad or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. So this is what the unenlightened mind is experiencing, is conditioned feelings. The mind's going up and down and up and down and up and down. Now, I'm sure you have peacefulness and calmness here and there, but it's only a matter of time before you become annoyed or frustrated about something. This is what the unenlightened mind experiences, that it's shaken up. So this is the problem that the Buddha discovered. And you can independently verify that this is true because you know your mind is unenlightened and you can see that your mind experiences all these feelings. If there's a certain feeling that you experience that doesn't fit into one of these three categories, let me know when we get to the question period and we can talk about that. So some people refer to this as suffering, but I don't refer to it that way because suffering only explains the painful feelings. It doesn't explain the pleasant feelings or the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. So if you use the word suffering, which a lot of people use in the world, then you're not fully understanding what the Buddha taught. You're missing 66% of his teachings. You're only understanding 33% here. So I would encourage you to use the word discontent, discontented, and discontentedness, because you need to be able to see that these conditioned pleasant feelings are just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. What the Buddha is teaching you to do is get to the point where you're experiencing unconditioned happiness or unconditioned joy, where there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for there to be happiness in the mind. But in the unenlightened state, you will experience conditioned happiness, meaning if these conditions are met, then you will be happy. And this is really limiting your happiness. That if your mom and dad do this and your brothers and sisters do this, if your boss does this, if the weather is this, if I have this kind of house and this kind of car, if I have this much money in my bank account, then I will be happy, right? This is limiting your happiness. It's sabotaging your ability to be happy permanently because all these conditions have to be met in order for you to be happy. So conditional happiness is unsatisfactory. It's displeasing because ultimately it's going to fade away. What the Buddha is teaching you to do is get to unconditioned happiness, where your mind can just always be happy and there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for the mind to experience that. So for example, if you got a brand new job and you guys are so happy and excited about that, well, when you're doing that job for the first 3 years and everything's going wonderful and you've got all these new coworkers, you've got all this nice office, nice salary and all these other things, you're so happy and excited. But then when the company goes out of business and they lay you off or you get fired, now you're angry or sad or frustrated. So if you allow your mind to have conditional happiness, you can only be happy if these conditions are met. So it's temporary. So the mind needs to be willing to let go of the temporary happiness in order to be able to get to the permanent happiness and the permanent joy. So these pleasant feelings are just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. But remember, what we're talking about here is conditional pleasant feelings. What the Buddha is teaching you to do is to get to unconditioned joy, unconditioned happiness. So you need to be able to independently verify that this is a universal truth, that this is what your mind is experiencing, is conditional feelings. Then there's something called the universal truth of non-self, which the universal truth of non-self is a solution for one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. There's 10 individuals pollutions of mind that the Buddha discovered. They're referred to as fetters. And the reason why they're called fetters is because during the lifetime of the Buddha, if you were someone that they were trying to keep confined to a certain area, they would put a fetter around your ankle. What a fetter is a shackle and a chain and a ball. And they would just keep you out in this field. And that's how they kept people like prisoners confined to a certain area. Where today we put prisoners in jail cells and things like this. Where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would attach this fetter around your ankle and they would keep you out in this field. So when the Buddha discovers these 10 pollutions, he calls them fetters, because it's keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state. And what he's teaching you to do on this path to enlightenment is to uproot these pollutions and get them out of the mind. Because when you release the fetter off the ankle of the prisoner, they're now free. Same thing is true about your mind. When you get rid of these pollutions, these fetters, the mind is now free. But as long as you have these pollutions in the mind is bound up with all these strong feelings. So by getting rid of it, it'll actually you'll experience the peace and the joy. So this universal truth of non-self is helping you to eliminate the very first pollution that the Buddha discovered, which is called personal existence view. I'll explain this to you so you'll understand this solution. What personal existence view is where the mind is clinging to the body and or the mind, thinking that this is who you are. The mind is clinging to a self-image or a self-identity, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And you can only be comfortable if you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived by others. So, for example, if you've ever maybe spilled something on your clothing in a social situation and you were embarrassed by that, That's your personal existence view, where the mind is wanting others to perceive you a certain way, and you couldn't feel comfortable unless they were perceiving you the way you wanted to be perceived. Or maybe you stood in front of your closet and you thought about, who am I going to see today, and how do I want to look? And you might have put on certain clothing and looked in the mirror, and then you're like, no, that's not how I want to look. I don't feel comfortable going outside that way. And then you put on another set of clothing. You're like, no, that's not it. And you put on a third set and you're like, all right, now I feel comfortable to go outside. This is your personal existence view. Or maybe you looked in the mirror and you saw a pimple or a wrinkle or a mole, or you saw a gray hair. You started losing your hair. This might have shaken you up. And this is your personal existence view, where you're clinging to this body, wanting others to perceive you a certain way. And you can only feel comfortable if they're perceiving you in the way you want to be perceived. So this is clinging to the self-image. Then there's a self-identity based on maybe your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation, of who you think you are as a person. And if you cling to this, when you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived, you'll be happy and excited about that. But when you're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived, you'll be frustrated or angry or irritated. So for example, if you cling to the idea of I am an American, or I am Chinese, or I am a Canadian, or I am German, or I am Israeli, or any of this I am. Well, when you're in a restaurant and two tables over, people are speaking very fondly of your identity that you're clinging to in your mind, you'll get pleasant feelings. You'll be really happy. They're like, all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle. And you feel so happy and excited because you feel like they're talking about you. But then it's only a matter of time before two tables over, somebody says something degrading and disparaging about the nationality or the identity that you're clinging to in your mind. And now you're angry or frustrated because you think they're talking about you. Or say you've been in a relationship and you think, I am a boyfriend, or I am a girlfriend, or I am a husband, I am a wife, and you've adopted this as your identity of who you think you are. Well, as long as you're in that relationship, there's a certain amount of comfort that you have. But when you guys break up, you might feel uncomfortable because your mind doesn't identify with I am single. The mind is identifying with I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I'm a wife, and the mind feels uncomfortable being single. And you might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship because the mind thinks that that's what's going to solve this uncomfortableness, is to hurry up and reassume that identity. But what's actually going to solve this is to realize non-self. That's what the Buddha is teaching you as part of this universal truth of non-self, is to realize that there is no self here, that this body is not you, this mind is not you. This self-image that the mind tends to cling to, this self-identity that the mind is clinging to, this isn't you. It doesn't define who you are as a person. But in the unenlightened state, because of the mind's lack of wisdom, it will cling to this and it will hold on to it, thinking that this is who you are as a person. And now you will form feelings based on that. So you can realize non-self, where you strip all that away and you don't experience those discontent feelings any longer. So this is just a little bit of a short recap of the three universal truths. I oftentimes take my time to really walk through this and make sure that you're independently verifying what it is that I'm sharing. But today I was interested in just kind of giving a little recap. But I would like to pause here and see if there's any questions that you have on what I've just shared here. Is there anything here or online that you guys would like to ask? Yes, sir. If you could get a microphone up here right in the front, and that'll help the people online to be able to hear you.
Hello, yeah. Thank you very much for the explanation on the these points. I have the description of the world, like everything is constantly changing. So personal thinking, I'm thinking also agree this, and from perspective, I think everything is changing and kind of converging to nothing. So and like what you say, there's no permanent states. So I'm thinking of, if there's no permanent states, what's the meaning of our existence?
Yeah, this is the mind's ego that's looking for a purpose or the meaning of our existence. There's really no purpose. There's really no meaning for this existence. The this being and all these beings that are here were in existence, but there's really no purpose for it. But the mind's ego is looking for a purpose. It's like, hey, there's got to be some purpose here. Like, why am I here? Where if you let that go and you just realize that what you would like to do as a goal or as an objective is to cultivate wisdom, train your mind, get to the point where your mind's enlightened, you can evolve to this higher consciousness where you're no longer experiencing any discontent feelings. If you just focus on that, cultivating this wisdom, which part of that is to eliminate the ego, then you'll see that you don't need a purpose to live in this life. But the mind's oftentimes looking and longing, yearning for what is my purpose, where you don't need a purpose. You can just choose to live a very wonderful life, choose to cultivate wisdom, choose to be able to get to enlightenment to the point where you've evolved to this higher consciousness. And this can be a goal or an objective for you. But I wouldn't suggest that you adopt this as a purpose. This is what oftentimes people are looking for, is some purpose. Whereas if you hold on to that or you cling to that, it'll tend to keep you locked in a certain way of being. So for example, when I first started out my career, I was in the IT field and I was doing computer work. If I thought that this was my purpose in life and I adopted that as my mindset of this is my purpose, is to provide IT services to these companies that I was consulting with, then I would have not felt comfortable to move into something else. Because after that, I started to open my own businesses and started to learn how to open my own businesses. Well, if I was clinging to this IT stuff, I would have never opened my own businesses, right? But then once I started doing that, if I thought that that was my purpose, that now I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business owner, I would have never been willing to let that go in order to move to something else, like sharing the teachings of the Buddha. So once the mind adopts what it thinks is a purpose, it will tend to cling to it and hold on to it and be unwilling to change. And you're going to need to change the things that you do in life. So it's unwise to cling to any idea of this is my purpose, because now if you meet your expectations, you'll be happy about that. But if you don't meet your expectations, you'll be sad and frustrated. So instead, just get rid of the idea that you need a purpose and just choose to cultivate wisdom, train your mind, move to this higher consciousness that the Buddha is teaching you to cultivate, and train the mind to get to a point where it's completely peaceful and joyful. But don't even see that as a purpose. Instead, just work towards it as an objective or an interest that you're gradually making your way towards.
Thank you very much for the explanation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Kate. Thank you for your teachings. I'm just curious. Buddhism is like very new to me, and I'm curious. Like you as a teacher, would you say you've reached like the enlightened mind? And sort of adjacent to that question is is the idea like when you die, that's like when you reach enlightenment, or it's like you're trying, like you can attain that while you're living?
Sure. Enlightenment is a mental state that you attain in this life. You can attain it in your life. And once you attain enlightenment, you'll experience peace and joy for the rest of your life. You'll notice that you don't experience any discontent feelings, that you experience focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. You'll see all your personal, professional relationships are really blossoming. You'll see that you're not even in a bad mood anymore, that it's physically impossible for you to experience a bad mood. So it's something you can attain in this life, but you can attain it at death as well. That is possible, but that's not ideal, because then you would have lived your entire life with discontentedness. But it is possible to attain it at death. So you would like to attain enlightenment during your life. And by applying effort and energy towards learning and growing and developing on the path, you can attain enlightenment during this lifetime. An individual who's enlightened, they won't say that they are enlightened, because that's one of the best ways to know someone's not enlightened, is someone will roll up to you and they'll be like, hey, by the way, don't tell anybody, but I'm enlightened, right? And this is arrogance, it's pride, it's boastfulness, it's, being puffed up. And someone who's gotten to enlightenment, they don't have ego in their mind. They don't have that boastfulness and that arrogance in their mind. So somebody won't say, yes, they're enlightened, but they also won't say, no, they're not enlightened, because they would be lying. And an enlightened being doesn't lie. So instead, in my opinion, what an enlightened being would do is they would be more interested in seeing you to learn about what enlightenment is, so that you can get closer and closer to enlightenment. Not all enlightened beings will teach. Not every enlightened being. There'll be enlightened taxi drivers and enlightened politicians and people like this. But some enlightened beings do choose to teach. The things that I teach you about what enlightenment is and the resources that I share and everything that I share it based on my own personal experiences. So sometimes a better way to ask that type of question to be able to kind of indicate for you whether someone is experiencing enlightenment or not is to ask questions like, do you still experience anger? Do you still experience frustration? Or when's the last time you experienced anger or frustration? Or is it possible to eliminate anger and frustration? And if somebody says, no, it's not possible to eliminate that, then you know that they're not enlightened yet. So these are the better type of questions to be able to ask. And in this book series, in the first volume, if you go to chapter 3 in the very back of the book, the very back of the chapter, I put about 6 or 8 different questions that you could ask somebody to determine whether or not they're enlightened or not. But the goal of this path isn't to try to determine if someone else is enlightened. The goal is for you to get to enlightenment. But when you're studying with a teacher, it's kind of nice to know whether they're enlightened or not. So that's why I share that in the book, to be able to help students to be able to understand whether a teacher is enlightened or not, because not everybody's going to necessarily be able to study with me while I'm alive. So this book will be around long after I die. And then as they are trying to find teachers, they can find a teacher who is enlightened based on these criteria. So you can take a look at that, and you're welcome to ask me any of those questions that you like, and I'd be pleased to answer them for you. But I won't answer yes or no about that particular type of question, just because it's not something that I would answer. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Just to follow on from the 2 questions I heard, I feel slightly confused because the first question, my understanding is like we shouldn't be too attached to an end goal. It's a intention, maybe it's like a work in progress. But when we ask about enlightenment, it sounds like a final state. Like once you're enlightened, you'll be like, it almost sounds like a permanent state where you will never feel anger or fear. So I guess I'm just wondering about that. Like there's permanence in that question.
Yeah. So the enlightened mental state is permanent. It is a permanent mental state. So when I say here that everything in the world is impermanent, is constantly changing, what I shared with you is I shared with anything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind. These are called conditioned objects. Conditioned objects arise, they change, and then they fade away. These are called conditioned objects. And everything in the material world around you is a conditioned object. But then there's something called unconditioned objects. Unconditioned objects do not arise, they do not change, and they don't fade away. There's no condition that is producing this, and therefore it is permanent. Right? So one of the things that people are confused about is that they think that the Buddha said everything is impermanent, where in reality he taught conditioned objects and he taught unconditioned objects. So by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is experiencing unconditioned mental states. There doesn't need to be any condition met in order for you to experience this. In the unenlightened state, you'll have conditional feelings. There are certain pollutions that are in your mind that are the conditions that are producing these feelings. So you'll have feelings that will arise, they will change, and then they will fade away. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you've purified the mind of those pollutions. Those conditions no longer exist in your mind. So your mind is now unconditioned. So the peace, the calm, the serenity, the contentedness, the joy, the focus, the concentration, the clarity, and all these other qualities of mind that you experience as part of the enlightened mental state, there's no condition that is producing them. In fact, the way that you're experiencing it is that you've unconditioned the mind. You're now experiencing the unconditioned mental state of enlightenment. So one of the ways to think about it is that your mind is already enlightened, but you have these pollutions that are in the way. these conditions that are hindering you from experiencing those qualities. But when you get these conditions out of the way, when you get the pollution of the mind out of the way, your mind is now unconditioned. It's been purified. And that's why the enlightened mental state is permanent, that you'll never experience anger, sadness, frustration, or all these other discontent feelings ever again, because the mind is now in this unconditioned mental state. It's no longer a conditioned mind. It's an unconditioned mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I find that there's a thin line between feeling discontent and feeling numb and not care as much. I want to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, when you're training your mind, the mind has a hard time to come to the middle where it's experiencing brightness, cheerfulness, glad, and uplifted. What the unenlightened mind can see is the two extremes. It can see either chasing after things and experiencing happiness and excitement when you get what you want, and sadness and anger and frustration when you don't get what you want. You can see that because you experience that regularly. And then you can also see the other side where the mind swings and you might feel dull or numb or lethargic. But those are the two extremes. What the Buddha is teaching you to do is come to the middle. And right now you say that that's a thin line because you can't see that middle. It's not very clear for you. But as you train your mind and you're able to come to the middle, you'll be able to see that middle much more clearly, and it opens up for you. It's much wider because the mind doesn't see that middle way. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you're not feeling numb. You're not feeling dull. When people hear about eliminating these conditioned feelings, that's what they tend to think. But that's because they can see these two extremes really well. But when you come to the middle, your mind is always bright. It's cheerful. It's glad. It's uplifted at all times. And there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for the mind to experience this. So while it looks very bleak to you now and like a thin line, that's just because the mind hasn't been trained to be able to come to the middle and see that middle and walk that middle way. But the more you do that through the teachings of the Buddha, you'll be able to see that much more clearly. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. I think that's all the questions. Oh, yes, ma'am. Could you use the mic here? The people online will appreciate that. Yeah, we have mics up here too if you guys need more mics. It'll just cut out every once in a while because it's impermanent. It's on. It's just the signal will drop every once in a while.
So my question is just what you said. Do you still experience painful feelings? And if you have, how do you deal with it?
I no longer experience anger, sadness, frustration, or any of these other feelings that I talk about. It's been a very long time since I've experienced any of those things. So I was able to train my mind to be able to get to the point where I am today. But I wouldn't say to somebody that, I am enlightened, because that's a very big indication that someone's not enlightened. But I don't experience these feelings any longer. I used to in the past, but I don't any longer. So everything that I teach you is based on my experiences with these teachings. And that's why I'm motivated to be able to come here and share these teachings with people like you and all of you guys, is because I know that if you experience this mental state, that it's the very best thing that could ever happen for you, that you will experience such a wonderful and fulfilling life. It's been a very long time since I've experienced any of that stuff. But what you do is what I'm teaching you here is that one of the things that you're going to be able to learn as part of the teachings of the Buddha is that when you notice the anger and frustration arising, you need to be able to cut that off and let it go. But I'm going to teach you something to eliminate fear that's beyond that. But the core central teaching of the Buddha, which is called the Eightfold Path, which I'm going to kind of just show you here in a moment, it's going to provide you the full guidance, because it's not just meditation that you need to be able to get to a point where you're no longer experiencing anger and sadness and all these other discontent feelings. Oftentimes people think the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and then instantly got to enlightenment, but this isn't actually true. There's other things that you need besides that. But that meditation we did this morning is really helpful because it's building this internal mechanism in your mind to be able to cut off and let go. You're not suppressing your feelings or repressing your feelings. But what you're doing is when you notice them as a bodily sensation, you cut them off and let them go. And this is a kind of getting ahead of the curve. The way that you might think about it, if there's a wild bush growing, you got to cut it back and cut it back and cut it back and cut it back and cut it back before you uproot it, and then it won't ever grow again, right? So the same thing's true about your anger, your frustration, or any of these other feelings that you experience. You've got to cut them back. And when you cut it back, you'll eventually uproot it, the causes and conditions that are producing it, and then you'll never experience it ever again. So in the process of training, you'll notice the arising of anger and frustration. And what you do is you cut that off and let it go. And if you haven't built that internal mechanism in your mind, one of the ways to do this is redirect the mind, is take it in another direction. So for example, if you're sitting there watching the news and something comes on and you just notice all this frustration starting to build, like maybe tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. If you start noticing these bodily sensations, this is alerting you that you're about to get angry. The mind's about to experience frustration or agitation. This is like an early warning system alerting you of that. And what you would like to do is redirect the mind. Don't just allow the mind to sit there and keep watching the news. That's very unwise, because your mind's going to form this feeling. Instead, redirect the mind, cut off the news, go outside for a walk, go for a bike ride, go do something else, redirect the mind in a different direction. And if you do this enough, over time, eventually you get to the point where anger and frustration never arises. But you're going to go through this elongated period of time of training where you need to watch over the mind. And anytime you see these discontent feelings arising, you cut it off and let it go. So that's the way, one of the things that you need in order to be able to get to this place where you're no longer experience these feelings. But there's more than just that, but that's kind of getting to the heart of it. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so once you understand the three universal truths as building blocks, there's only one additional thing that you need in order to understand why you experience fear and all these other discontent feelings. It's something called craving, desire, attachment, expectations, wants, holding, grasping, clinging. This is the mind longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection. It's almost like the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases it and chases it and chases it. It's almost like an unquenchable thirst, that the mind thinks that there's something external that is going to provide lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases it and chases it and chases it. If you've ever been in the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes and you're like, oh my gosh, new shoes. Oh, I can't wait to get those on my feet. This is the mind craving and longing, yearning, right? And if you go in the store and they have your size, you're like, yes, I got my shoes. Oh, they're going to look so good, right? You're so happy and excited about that. That's a conditioned, pleasant feeling. But if you walk into the store and you're like, can I have size whatever you have? And they go in the back and they look and they come back and they're like, sorry, we don't have your size. Now you're frustrated. Now you're angry because of this craving. This is the cause you're going to see in the Four Noble Truths. This is what's causing your discontent feelings, because the mind's longing, yearning, trying to form its inner feelings based on this. Do you guys know what I'm talking about here? Have you experienced craving before? Where your mind's longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection. It could have been a new pair of shoes. It could have been a new phone. It could have been jewelry. It's not the object itself that is the craving, desire, attachment. It's the way that the mind is longing, yearning for it. So for example, if I had a liter of water in my car and I was on my way to a hiking trail and I got out of the car on this hiking trail and I forgot the water and it was in the car, I might be 30 minutes down the trail and someone might think, oh my gosh, my water. Oh, I forgot my water. And their mind's all shaken up and they run back to their car and they sling open the door and they grab their liter of water and they're like, oh, my water, right? Or there could be someone else out on the trail who also forgot their water. And they're like, I forgot my water. I am going to be out here for a while. I should probably make my way back to the car and get this water because I'm going to be out here for like 6 or 8 hours. Let me go get my water. And now that they calmly make their way back to their car. So the object is the same. It's the water. But the difference in the two people is what's going on in the mind. It's the longing, yearning for the water. That's what's actually called the craving, desire, attachment. So you guys know what I'm talking about here with craving? Yeah? Okay. All right. All right. So now, just a little recap of the Four Noble Truths. Again, usually I take my time. This whole thing, I usually take about 45 minutes to an hour to go through it, but I'm kind of doing it in about 20 minutes or so. So the first noble truth is explaining the problem that you're experiencing, is that everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness, these conditioned feelings. You're not a bad person, you haven't done anything wrong, but every unenlightened being, everyone who's ever been born, including the Buddha, when he was born, he was experiencing this too, that the mind is happy and excited, but then it's sad and frustrated, and then it's irritated and annoyed, then it's experiencing boredom and loneliness or shyness or resentment or some other discontent feeling. It's only a matter of time before this is experienced. The mind's going up and down and up and down and up and down. This is the problem in the unenlightened mind, because as long as you have these discontent feelings, you can't make wise decisions, and it's producing unwholesome results in your day-to-day life. So this is the problem that each person is experiencing. Then the cause of that problem is here. This is what's causing the fear, as well as all the other feelings in the mind too, whether it's anger, sadness, frustration, or others. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. So I'm going to share that a couple of ways, and I'll give you guys a few examples to understand this. The discontentedness, the pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant, are being caused by craving, desire, attachment. The mind craves for things to be permanent, but yet you live in an impermanent world. Things are constantly changing. So for example, let's just say you had a boyfriend or girlfriend. You guys came together. You were probably so happy and excited when you first got together. But then at some point, the relationship deteriorated and you guys broke up and the relationship's over. And now you might be angry or sad or frustrated. It's not your love that's causing this. This is the mind holding on and craving permanence, wanting this person to be permanent in your life, when in reality, they are impermanent. None of these relationships are permanent. Every single one of us, the relationships are going to change. We're going to end these relationships at some point. Even this boyfriend and girlfriend, if you guys were together for the rest of your life, you're still going to die at some point, right? And now when you die, the relationship's over, right? So oftentimes people think it's the love or your care or your concern that's causing these painful feelings. They might think that love hurts and love is painful, but it's actually not the love. It's the mind craving permanence. You can see this if you've had someone close to you die, like grandma, grandpa, mom or dad, or people like this, that when the mind is experiencing grandma and grandpa alive, the mind's getting what it wants. It's getting what it expects. So therefore it's happy. But then when you experience this impermanence, this change, the mind doesn't like that. That grandma and grandpa have died, or mom or dad have died. And now brothers and sisters and others, these people, as they leave out of your life, the mind is holding on and craving permanence, and it's not getting what it wants. I'll give you some other examples that don't involve relationships, and maybe you can see this clearly, because you need to be able to independently verify what I'm sharing. Don't believe what I'm sharing. So think if you bought a brand new car and you were so excited about this brand new car, and you drove it off the parking lot and you parked it at a store, and then you went inside and you came out and there was a scratch on your car. You might be so angry or frustrated in this situation. Well, it's not the scratch that's causing that. And it's not the person who scratched your car that's causing the discontent feelings. The anger and frustration is being caused by craving, desire, attachment. The mind is craving permanence. It wants this car to look permanently beautiful, where it's not possible for this car to be permanently beautiful. It's only a matter of time before the paint fades, before the tires need to be changed, the upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. It's only a matter of time. And if your mind craves permanence, when you experience this impermanence, your mind doesn't like it. So this is one of the ways to say it, which is the way I have it here, which is because the mind wants everything to be permanent, but yet everything else in the world is impermanent. So one of the ways to say it is that the mind craves permanence. Another way to say it is that the mind doesn't like impermanence. It doesn't like change. It doesn't like when things are changing in your life. This is why if you look at your life, when things were changing, those were very difficult times for you. when you were changing living locations, when you were changing jobs or occupations, when you were changing relationships. Those were all some of the biggest challenges for you in your life. So you can look at your own life to be able to independently verify this. Take a recent situation. Maybe it was this morning or yesterday or last week when you were angry or frustrated or irritated or some other discontent feeling, right? You need to relate this to your own life. At that time, you might have been trying to blame somebody else for the feelings that you were having, but now look at it through this fresh eyes, this new wisdom. What was it that you wanted? What did you expect? What were you longing, yearning for, that if you would have gotten it, you would have been happy? But because your mind didn't get what it wanted or what it expected, there was some kind of anger or frustration or other feeling. If you can see this, you can have a real breakthrough to being able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Because what the mind will tend to do when you don't know the second noble truth is you'll blame other people for the feelings that you experience. The mind firmly believes in the unenlightened state that the anger and all those other feelings is coming from something external. So when the mind doesn't understand the second noble truth, you'll tend to push people away. This is called aversion, where you push away a person or you push away a situation, right? Or the second thing you'll do is you'll become angry and bitter and harsh and hostile towards someone through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal. Or the third thing you'll do is you'll put your expectations on people, where you'll try to pressure them to do things your way. And this is the mind craving permanence, wanting everybody to do it this way. So if you can see this, you can have a real breakthrough to being able to see it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Because with craving, desire, attachment, your mind will hold on and it'll crave permanence. But there's a solution. That's what the third noble truth is, that the elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. If you eliminate the cause, up here in the second noble truth, the cause is craving, desire, attachment. If you eliminate the cause, you will eliminate the effect. So that's what the third noble truth is explaining to you, which is very empowering. That if your mind is causing its own cravings, desires, attachments, well, if you eliminate that, where you're no longer chasing after your wants and expectations, then your mind can actually be free and it can be peaceful. But sometimes when I say that, people think, well, won't I become dull and lethargic and numb to the world because I'm not chasing after these things? Won't I lack motivation? Well, you might, but that's not what the Buddha is teaching you. That's where the mind swings to the other side. There's this middle way where you can gradually pursue your goals, objectives, or interests. So you need to be able to see how it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, because once you see that it's your own mind causing these feelings, then you understand that, wow, I can solve this. Because what people tend to do when they're experiencing difficulties in life and in relationships, they'll think that it's mom and dad that are causing their anger, or brothers and sisters, or things like this. And they think they have to fix that person. They have to convince that person to do things your way. But this will never actually solve your problems. So you might have done this where you're going around the world trying to convince other people to do things your way. And you need to be able to see that that doesn't solve your problem, because that's the craving for permanence. That if people do it this way, you're happy. But if they don't do it that way, you're angry or frustrated or sad or some other discontent feeling. So what the second noble truth is explaining is the craving, desire, attachment is the cause. And I've shown you how to independently verify that, right? The third noble truth, you can independently verify this too, because what the Buddha is teaching you is ultimately that your mind needs to let go. That's what the problem, that the mind's holding on and it's craving permanence. So think about the boyfriend or girlfriend that you broke up with. At some point, your mind let go. And that's where you regained your peace and your joy. You were like, you know what? If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. And you let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. Or you were like, you know what? If she wants to live in a different part of the world, okay, so be it. And you let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. But the mind doesn't know how to let go. That's where the third noble truth comes in. The fourth noble truth comes in. Because the mind doesn't know how to eliminate its cravings, desires, attachments, you need a training plan. You need to learn how to train your mind to let go. And that's what the fourth noble truth is explaining to you. That the path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. This is the complete perfect plan that's going to guide you in how to actually train your mind to get to the point where you're not experiencing discontentedness any longer. And it starts with right view. What right view is to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. If you had wrong view, you would be blaming others for the feelings that you experience. And that's typically what the mind does in the unenlightened state because of its lack of wisdom. But when you establish right view, you can see clearly that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And because it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, you can actually solve it. So if you were to practice right view, I would encourage you to look inward to be able to see what's going on in your own mind. What are you craving? What are you longing for? What are you yearning for? So, for example, when you're checking in at an airport and you think that your flight's leaving in about an hour, and when you go to check in, the ticket person says, "Sorry, sir. Sorry, ma'am. Your flight's delayed. It's not leaving for 3 hours." And you notice anger and frustration coming up in your mind. Well, the first thing you'd like to do is cut that off, right, and let it go. But rather than sitting in the waiting area and being so angry and frustrated, thinking that the airline company is the one who's causing your anger, instead, see the truth. Start looking inward. Practice right view, where you start looking, what am I longing for? What am I yearning for? Maybe you're on your way to Thailand and you know that they have mango and sticky rice. They have massages. They have elephants to play with. And your mind's like longing, yearning for this stuff. And you just can't wait to get your tongue on that mango and sticky rice. You just can't wait to get your massage. You just can't wait to play with those elephants. Oh my gosh, they're so cute. All those noises that they make. Oh, they're so fun to play with, right? And now you can sit there in the waiting area and you can say, I see my mind's craving that mango and sticky rice, those massages, playing with those elephants. That's what's causing this anger and frustration. All I'm experiencing is impermanence. That's all I'm experiencing is change, that every single airplane cannot take off on time. It's not possible. There's going to be weather issues. There's going to be maintenance issues with the planes. There's going to be crew issues where sometimes the crew doesn't show up for the airline company to be able to fly the airplane, right? This is all impermanence. That's all that is. If you travel enough, you're going to meet with delays. And when your anger comes up, it's coming from your own mind. There's some craving there. So rather than sit there and be disgruntled and frustrated in the waiting area, cut that off. Understand that, hey, this is impermanence. This is the way the world works. Things are constantly changing. So this is how you establish right view, and you practice right view as you start looking inward and being introspective to be able to see what's causing your anger and frustration. And it's not the outside world. It's not other people. So let me pause here before I teach you about how to eliminate fears. Let me see if you have any questions here on the Four Noble Truths of what's causing these discontent feelings. That it's craving, desire, attachment. It's what's going on in one's own mind. You need to be able to see this because sometimes people need help to be able to see this. If you need help, let me know. I've had plenty of students over the years that have had questions to be able to see this for themselves. So does anybody need help to be able to understand this? No questions? Okay. Maybe I'll give you guys a story to be able to help you see it too. One time I had a student contact me. They said, "David, I know that you teach that it's my own mind that's causing these feelings, but I'm sure it's my wife that causes these feelings. Can you help me to be able to see that it's my own mind that's causing these feelings?" And I said, "Sure, what's going on?" They said, "Well, I went to work the other day and my house looked beautiful. And when I came home, my wife had this craft project all over the house. And when I walked in, I got frustrated. I got angry. How did I cause that? I wasn't even there. She's the one who messed up the house. Didn't she cause me to be angry?" And I said, "No, it was your own mind. You were craving permanence. You were expecting your house to look exactly the same when you came home as when you went to work. The only thing you're experiencing is change. That your house looked a certain way when you went to work, and when you came home, it looked a different way. This is normal. Your wife has this craft project all over the house, and she'll probably put it away at some point because that's impermanent too, right? So the mind will crave permanence, but it will firmly believe that it's other people that's causing this anger and frustration. So if you can penetrate into this and you can see the truth for yourself, this is so empowering because now you can actually apply the solution. And that's what the Eightfold Path is. You're going to need this to be well underway before you do what it is that I'm teaching you here in a minute. Okay, you're going to need to learn each one of these factors. And I taught this back in chapter 4 and chapter 5. As you guys heard, we're in chapter 17 now, and we repeat this program every 7 months. So you can learn this. In fact, this week coming up, Monday through Friday, I'm going to be teaching from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. I'm going to be teaching the Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment course. And all of our programs and courses are available at no cost. You guys are welcome to come here if you like, because I'm going to be teaching this entire path on Tuesday morning. And you can come just for Tuesday morning if you like, or you can come for the whole course. It's really up to you. But I'm going to be teaching students this because you need to know this first. Once you know this and you're starting to dial this in closer and closer to your life, then you can start doing this in order to eliminate your fear. Because there's certain fears that you might have in your mind right now. You might have the fear of spiders or a fear of snakes, or you might have a fear of heights, or you might have a fear of your own death. There's ways for you to eliminate this, but you need the Eightfold Path to be well underway first before you do something like this. That's why this is chapter 17 and the Eightfold Path was chapter 4 and 5. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to eliminate the craving, desire, attachment in the mind to eliminate the discontent feeling of fear. You need to eliminate that longing, yearning, craving for permanence and craving for things to be a certain way. And the Eightfold Path is going to help you to do that. But now I'm going to teach you something that you can go in and almost surgically remove these cravings, desires, attachments to eliminate the fear. You can place the mind in the situation that it fears to desensitize the mind from whatever it fears, training the mind that there's nothing to fear. So, for example, let's just say I was afraid of spiders. I never want to see a spider. That's the permanence that the mind's craving. I never want to see a spider. That's the craving. That's the permanence that the mind wants to have. And it's pushing away these spiders. It has aversion to spiders, right? But the fact is that you're going to see a spider at some point. So it's only a matter of time before you see one. And now you're craving and your mind gets triggered and now you're fearful. So trying to push away spiders doesn't actually solve your problem because the cause of that is inside your mind. You need to actually desensitize the mind. You need to eliminate this craving to never, ever, ever see spiders. And the way that you do that is you expose the mind to the thing that it's fearing. So, for example, I would suggest you look at pictures of spiders on the internet or in magazines or things like that. You expose the mind to this and you feel the fear and you cut that off and you cut that off and you cut that off. And you do that a few times over multiple sessions until eventually you can look at pictures and your mind's quite peaceful. But now you increment that. You maybe go to a museum or something like that where they're not alive, but they have those little eyes and they have those little hairs coming on their body, and you look at them and you feel the fear coming up and you cut that off and you cut that off and you cut that off. And you might need to do that a couple of times, but then eventually go to a place where there's actually spiders. Maybe you go into the woods or you go to a pet store or you go to a zoo or something like this. And now you expose the mind to that. And if you notice any fear coming up, you cut that off and cut that off and cut that off. And all the while reminding yourself of this natural law of karma, of cause and effect or action and result, that if you're not causing harm, there's no harm that's going to come to you. You can't cause someone else to be discontent. Just like you cause your own mind to be discontent, other people are causing their mind to be discontent too. But you can cause someone harm. Causing someone harm is to cause harm to their physical body, to their material possessions, or their reputation. Anytime you cause harm, harm is going to come back to you. So when you're just standing there looking at a spider, you're not causing any harm. It's not going to jump at you and lurch at you and just start attacking you. That spider actually has a craving to not see a human being too. And when it sees you, it's going to run away because it has an aversion to you. It's scared of you, right? So when you look at the spider, you're not causing it any harm, and that's why there's no harm that's going to come to you. So you can desensitize your mind to something like being afraid of a spider by exposing it to the spider. Pushing it away and saying, I never want to see any spiders ever, doesn't solve your problem. Here's another example. Let's just say you're afraid of large crowds. You never want to be around a large crowd. And you think, I'm never going to be around a large crowd. I'm never going to go in those situations. Well, someday you're walking through the city. Maybe you're walking through New York City or somewhere else, and you turn the corner, and next thing you know, you're in the middle of a big political protest, and there's thousands of people around you. And now there's all this fear and all this anxiety, and you start shaking. Right? You haven't solved your problem. That's why you're experiencing that. So just trying to avoid large crowds doesn't actually work, because someday you're going to find yourself in a large crowd. So what you would like to do is actually start going around large crowds, start spending some time around large crowds, because you know you can be peaceful and joyful when there's just a few people around. But now you've got to train your mind to be peaceful and joyful in this large crowd too. Or say you're afraid of heights. You don't like to go up in high places. Well, you're going to need to start exposing the mind to that. You're going to need to go to like a mall that has maybe a couple of levels, and you go up maybe 1 or 2 or 3 levels, and you look over the side and you feel the fear coming up, and you cut that off, right? And maybe you do that a few times. And then you go to another building that's maybe higher, maybe 5, 6, 8 levels, and you look over the side and you see the fear coming up, and you cut that off, right? And eventually you go to the point where you can go all the way up to the 30th, 40th, 50th, 100th level, and you can look over and you can be completely comfortable and you don't have any fear. But avoiding that situation doesn't solve this, because the craving is still in your mind and it's causing the mind to be discontent. So you'd like to expose your mind to this. As I mentioned to you, you can even eliminate the fear of death. You guys might think, well, what am I supposed to do? Kill myself? Am I supposed to put myself in that situation? No, of course not. There's other ways for you to do this. The Buddha taught something called contemplation of death, or reflection on death. What you would like to do is you'd like to actually sit somewhere, close your eyes, and envision that you've actually died. Convince your mind that you've actually died, like you're a fly on the wall, right? That maybe you've been in a terrible car accident, or maybe there was some terminal illness like cancer or something like this. You play it out in your mind, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, kind of play this whole thing out where you're actually experiencing death. Right? And now maybe there's a funeral, maybe there's a burial or a cremation, maybe your family is there preparing all of these things. And now you've convinced your mind that you've died, and you might grieve. You might be sorrowful. You might be sad. You might even start crying, or you might be scared. You might feel fear coming up in your mind, but you can cut that off and let it go, because death is going to come visit every single one of us. Every single one of us are going to die. It's only a matter of time, because we are impermanent. So we can either avoid this topic of death and people try to push it away and never think about it, or what the Buddha is teaching you to do is to confront death. Because death's kind of like in the back of the room, sitting in the corner, and it's like, I'm going to come visit you someday. And you're like, yeah, I know you're going to come visit me someday. Right? And you can wait for death to come sneak up on you, and it'll catch you by surprise, right? It's like pulling out the carpet from under your feet or chopping you off at the knee. And that's where you're going to be really scared, and you're going to be fearful, and you're going to have painful feelings. But you can do it that way. Or you can say, I see you back there, death. I know you're going to come visit me, but you know what? I'm going to come visit you. Right? So now that's what reflection of death is. That's what contemplation of death is you're going to visit death. You're going to get comfortable with it. So you go envision in your mind that you've died. And you might need to do this on multiple sessions. I suggest you spread it out over a month period, that maybe you do it once, and then you wait like another month and you do it again, and then you wait another month and do it again. You can do this for yourself. You can even do it for other people. If you have fear that your parents are going to die, or your life partner, or your children, or something like this, you can do that in your mind. You can envision that they've died. And now over time, your mind will get more and more comfortable with this, that you'll understand that, yeah, this life is going to come to an end, and that's normal. You don't have to be afraid of death. You can just understand that it's part of life, that if you're born, you're going to experience sickness, aging, and death. It's going to happen. And now we can just get comfortable with it. Just like when you go outside, you're comfortable when the wind blows and you're not upset or fearful about the wind blowing. You can do the same thing with death. It's just be understanding that, yeah, it's a normal occurrence of life, and now I can just get comfortable with it. So death is waiting in the corner for every single one of us, and you can decide to go visit death and not allow it to come sneak up on you. And this is how you eliminate your fear of death, is do contemplation of death or reflection on death. So do you guys have any questions on how to eliminate fear? Are there any fears that you have that you would like to talk about? And I can explain to you how to desensitize your mind to this so you can let go of the underlying craving, desire, attachment that's producing the fear. The fear is the symptom. The fear is the problem. The cause of it is craving. And what I'm describing to you here helps your mind to let go and eliminate that craving for permanence by desensitizing the mind. Any questions you guys have? Yes, ma'am. For those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask questions.
Thanks for the examples you were giving about fear. So in my mind, I was thinking a lot of the feelings, maybe some feeling are more human, like human might have it, but fear is such a survival instinct that even though, for example, with spider, rationally, I don't have fear for that, but some people might rationally know it's not harming you, but it's like a very biological, physiological, like these sensations come up that tell you to run away. So when you say cut it off, I guess I'm wondering how would you do it to really let your body get used to the idea of these objects?
Okay, so it's first important to understand that fear has nothing to do with biology whatsoever. It's all within the mind. The mind is not biological because there's the brain, which is the physical organ, but then there's the mind. The mind is non-physical, it's non-tangible. And what we're talking about is training the mind, not the brain. The brain is where the physical organ is, and that's where that's controlling the physical body. But it's the mind that we're talking about and training the mind. And it's not physical in nature, but that physical sensations that you're experiencing, that is being triggered by the mind. That there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind. And when there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, there's a connection between the brain and the mind. These are two separate things. So when the mind is triggered with its craving, experiencing some kind of contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, or the mind itself, now it sends the signal to the brain, and that's where you're experiencing the physical sensations. But the fear itself is coming from the mind. And there's no survival aspect of fear. That's what an animal experiences, that if you're a deer in the middle of a field and there's a lion that's waiting in the forest, as a deer, you need that fear because you don't have any intellect. You don't have as much intellectual understanding as a human being can cultivate. You need that to be able to trigger, and now you run away, right? And now the lion will chase you. Right. And now if the lion chases you and catches you and kills you, then you're dead. But if you were fast enough, you could get away. Right. So in the animal world, they need that fear in order to be able to react to certain situations because they don't have the intellect. But in a human existence, we don't need fear. There's nothing about fear that is actually helping you because, in fact, when your mind is fearful, it's shaken up. So therefore, you're going to make unwise decisions. You don't need to be fearful of a spider. You don't need to be fearful of heights. There's no beneficial result there. Instead, you can just make wise decisions about not sitting down and allowing spiders to crawl all over you. You can choose to stand on a stable platform and look over the side. You don't need fear in order to make decisions. So while you're thinking of it right now as a human nature or as something that's needed for survival, when you look at it objectively, you can see that the fear is actually getting in your way of being able to make wise decisions and then produce wholesome results for yourself. So you need to be able to see that it's the mind that's causing the fear from its craving, desire, attachments, and it doesn't produce anything beneficial to be able to have that fear in the mind. That in fact, if you get rid of the craving, desire, attachment, your mind will be quite calm and peaceful. And now let's just say somebody walks in with a gun, and in front of all of us, this person says, "Hey, everybody, give me your money, get on the floor." Well, if we become fearful, we're not actually helping the situation because everybody starts screaming and yelling, "Oh my gosh, someone's got a gun, someone's got a gun," right? And now this person maybe gets hyped up themselves and they start shooting. But if somebody walked in and said, "Hey, everybody, give me your gun, give me your money, get on the floor," and we stay nice and calm, and we're like, "All right, buddy, hey, if you need money, we'll give you money. No problem. We'll get on the floor. Sure, we'll do what you're asking. And now we just calmly do what we need to do in order to overcome that situation. Now we're able to overcome that situation. But the fear in that situation isn't helping anything. It doesn't help us to accomplish anything. It actually gets in your way of making wise decisions.
I think it answers part of my question because there has been a lot of research showing, for example, the fear is coming from our mammal brain. So to me, my understanding is fear is useful. It helps with survival. There are situations which is dangerous and we do have to fight or flight. And I guess like the example you gave about the deer, I feel like humans still have that. And I think right now we're still talking about rationally understanding, but when the danger is really there, there is a need to run or there's a need to freeze, for example. So it's
So
I wonder whether we need to get rid of all the fear. Yeah.
So what you're describing is what the unenlightened mind experiences, and that's all you know. What I'm explaining to you, what the Buddha is teaching you, is what you're able to accomplish if you train your mind, right? So scientists don't typically understand what the Buddha is teaching about the mind. So scientists, sure, they're going to maybe look at what an unenlightened being experiences, but they don't understand the difference here, that there's an unenlightened being and there's an enlightened being. And these two individuals, their mind functions completely different. And what they experience in the world is completely different. And what you're understanding right now is the unenlightened mind. And the unenlightened mind functions very much like an animal. But we're not animals, we're human beings. What we're talking about is evolving to this higher consciousness where your mind can function as an enlightened being. But you can't get to that if your mind just holds on to what you currently think about the world. If you continue to hold on to what you currently think, thinking that fear is biological, thinking that this fight or flight thing is ingrained in this being and that there's no way to change it and that the fear is useful, you'll never be able to experience what it is that the Buddha is describing and what I'm describing to you. So what you're currently describing, that's the unenlightened mind, and that's what you currently know, and that's what you currently understand. But there's this whole other better way of life that you can experience if you choose to let go of what you currently think and be able to penetrate into this to be able to see the truth. Because fear does not help you. There's no danger. If somebody walked in with a gun right now, I wouldn't jump up and run and try to get out of the window. I wouldn't run. I wouldn't be scared, right? I would just be like, okay, someone's here with a gun. So what do we need to do to solve this? Well, this is an impermanent situation, right? The fear doesn't help anything, but you need to be able to see it for yourself because I can explain it to you, but you need to be able to be willing to practice what we call the intention of renunciation. Under this right intention, the second step, so you just kind of got an overview of right view, but the very next part is right intention. What the intention of renunciation is that you need to be willing to let go of your false ideas, your false beliefs, your false opinions, and false views. Because if you currently experience anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other feelings, there's certain false opinions, false beliefs, and false views that you currently have in your mind. But the challenge is that the ego that's in the mind in the unenlightened state, the mind will think, I know. And the mind thinks that, I know everything. And the mind's arrogant and prideful, thinking that it already knows, when in reality, it doesn't know. So if an individual experiences anger, sadness, frustration, all these other feelings, there's a certain lack of wisdom that the mind has. But the ego's in there constantly telling this person that they know when they really don't know. So the mind needs to practice the intention of renunciation, where it's willing to let go of its false ideas, false beliefs, false opinions, and false views. And even scientists are still experiencing, in some cases, anger, sadness, and frustration, and they don't understand the mind in the same way that the Buddha understood it. So there's ability for you to understand this, but you need to be able to be willing to renunciate or let go of your false ideas and false beliefs and false opinions by bringing in wisdom to be able to see the truth. Do you guys have other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I had a question just with the analogy of like the spider. You were saying if you don't harm the spider, then it has no like incentive to like fight back or harm you.
Mhm.
And I know this is like a very hypothetical situation, but it just came to my mind and I wanted to know like what the answer would be from like the Buddhist perspective. But what if like there was like a rabid animal and you were just walking by and it just attacked and like you didn't approach it or anything, but it was like not right in the mind? Like, how would that work with the natural law of karma?
Yeah, so the way the natural law of karma works in that situation is that if a being is causing harm, then harm is going to come to it, right? So if there was a rabid animal and you were walking by and it started attacking, I would suggest to make wise decisions to get as far away from that animal as possible. But if you needed to cause harm to that animal in order to stop the harm that's coming to you, then would be wise. This would be a practice of loving kindness and compassion for this being who you are. Sometimes people think that with Buddhism that it teaches passivism and being passive, but this isn't actually true. Because if you were sleeping in your house at night and at 2:00 in the morning, someone broke into the window and they were coming into your home in order to cause you harm, because that's what they're there for, right? They're not bringing you chocolate and flowers by breaking into your window at 2 a.m. in the morning. They're there to do harm, right? So in that situation, I would suggest for people to just get out of the house if they can get out of the house. But it's not always wise to get out of the house. So the teachings of the Buddha aren't plug and play that says, if this happens, do that. And if this happens, do that, because that would be permanence. That would be a permanent answer for every situation. Instead, what the Buddha is doing is he's teaching you to move to this higher consciousness where your mind can be calm and peaceful and joyful. And now you can make wise decisions. That's why fear doesn't actually allow you to make any wise decisions. So if you hear that person breaking into the house downstairs and you had fear coming up in your mind, you might start making all kinds of irrational decisions. Where if you can maintain your calmness and composure, this is called equanimity. Now you can make wise decisions. So if you needed to cause harm to this person who's coming into the house, then that's what you need to do, because you're not going out into the world actively looking to harm others. Instead, you're just minding your own business in your home. And when this harm is coming to you, this is that person's karma that they're experiencing harm, because now that person has chosen to cause harm to your physical body, to your material possessions. So now when that's occurring, harm is coming to them. And you would like to cause the least amount of harm as possible in that situation. But ultimately, if you needed to kill this person, there's not going to be any unwholesome karma that comes to you as a result of that, because that was their karma that they chose to cause harm, and now they're experiencing death. And this is a practice of loving kindness and compassion for yourself. And you can see in that situation, you're experiencing wholesome karma or wholesome results because now you're alive. Whereas if you just stood there and let the person stab you with a knife, now you're experiencing unwholesome karma that you're going to be dead. So the Buddha is teaching you not to be passive and just allow the world to happen around you, but instead to make wise decisions. And you'll do that much better when your mind's nice and calm, practicing equanimity. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So I want to share like a real life fear of mine, but I think it's more like a practical question, because I work as an investment analyst and I need to do investment every day. So the biggest fear I have is that I don't want to lose money. And then if I lose money to a certain amount, that will mean I will lose my job. And then I guess the root of that fear, one part is that I have this craving for ownership of money, of property or anything. And then secondly, I think more importantly is that I have this desire to have the recognition of my self-value.
Okay.
I think that's part of the flip side of the non-self, because I have that identity. I want to prove myself. Mm-hmm. And then if I lose my job or if I lose money, that will means a denial of my self-value. So I guess that's the root. But I guess the dilemma or paradox here is that if I totally eliminate that will means probably I don't have a desire to do better in my job. Mm-hmm. So probably I will lose my job. I guess that's one extreme case. So I feel like the first question is that would that means I need to try to avoid to craving for my self-esteem? Is that the solution? And then a second question
Let
is
me
that
answer one at a time. I just do one thing at a time. All right. So your current thought that if you eliminated your desire to perform well at work and not lose money, that you would actually lose your job. That's not actually true. What desire is where the mind is longing, yearning, and craving for things to be a certain way and forming your feelings based on whether you get that thing or not. Okay. But if you were on the other side where you could care less about your job and how you performed, you're not going to be peaceful and joyful there either. Right. So those are the two extremes that the mind can see very clearly in the unenlightened state. But there's a middle way here that your mind's having challenges to be able to see, is that you can choose through wise decision making to have a certain education, to take your time with making decisions, make wise decisions, and gradually work towards ensuring that you're doing a wonderful job at work and that you're performing well. But you're not basing your feelings on whether you actually achieve a certain thing or not. Right now in the unenlightened state, if you have a goal and you accomplish your goal and you're happy, and you don't accomplish it and you're sad and frustrated, that's not a goal. That is a craving, desire, attachment. That's where the mind's longing, yearning. And if you get what you want, you're happy. And if you don't get what you want, you're sad or frustrated. Well, you already know because of impermanence that you're not always going to get what you want. It's not possible because the world is impermanent. So as soon as you allow your mind to lock in on something and say, I can only be happy if I get this, you're sabotaging your ability to be permanently happy because sometimes you're going to fall short of that, right? But if you're all the way on the other side where you could care less about what you're doing at work, you're not going to be peaceful and joyful there either. So there's a middle way. What a true goal is something that you can work towards. And as you're working towards that goal and objective, you're not forming your feelings on whether you accomplish it or not, because you already understand that sometimes you're going to be able to accomplish your goals and sometimes you're not. And not accomplishing a goal doesn't mean you failed. It just means that you're short of whatever you set your eyes on. So if you set your goal to accomplish a certain objective and now you're 80% of your way there, okay, I'm 80% of the way there. What do I need to do here? I can extend my timeline, give myself more time to accomplish this, or I could add more resources to be able to help me accomplish this. Or, you know what? I'm fine with the 80%. I don't need to go any further because the 80% is just fine for me. And now you can maintain your peace and you can maintain your joy. But if you can only be happy if you get what you want, that's a craving, desire, attachment. So you can gradually work towards performing well at work without craving, without longing, without yearning, because what you're doing now isn't working. That's what you're currently doing. But the only thing your mind can see other than chasing after things is it can see this other side where you swing to the other side and you could care less about what's going on at work. But the thing that your mind doesn't understand right now is how to navigate this middle, how to gradually work towards your goals and objectives, but not form your feelings based on whether you accomplish it or not. That's where the Eightfold Path comes in. You need to be able to learn this and train your mind to be able to gradually work towards things. I think the Buddha was one of the most ambitious people that ever lived because 2,500 years ago, he had the goal of his teachings reaching the entire world. That was the goal that he had. And it was never going to happen during his lifetime because he lived in a certain small region of the world in Northeast India, and he spoke a language that only a limited number of people on earth actually spoke at that time. And travel wasn't very readily available. So having this goal, this ambition, this enthusiasm to be able to teach for 45 years, realizing the goal and objective that he had, he was never going to meet that during his lifetime. But the things that he did during that 45 years set in motion the ability of that goal to be able to be realized many years later. Right now, his teachings is reaching the entire world because we have an international language. There's people in here from all different parts of the world. By using live stream, I can reach the entire world and I can share teachings with anybody who has an internet connection. So the Buddha had a goal that he was working towards that he was never going to achieve. So you need to be able to be willing to work towards goals through wise decisions and realize some of those goals you're going to achieve and you're going to accomplish, and that's fine. But some of the goals you're not going to accomplish, and that's fine too. but you can use wisdom to gradually work towards them rather than chasing after them and forming your feelings on whether you get it or not, because that's what your mind's currently doing. So it's this Eightfold Path that's going to help you to see this middle way.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think that's a quite helpful answer to that question. I guess it partly answered my second questions, but I guess I'm thinking about, I want to practice my mind to be, as you said, more in the middle way when I have a goal, but then not too attached to it, have too much craving for it. If I want to practice that to be better in my job, does it mean I'm practicing it with the wrong purpose? Because if I want to do better in my job, that seems to be a craving for something as well.
You would like to not want to do better in your job, right? That's the longing, yearning, but you're also not interested in being over here where you could care less. Instead, have a goal, have an objective, have an interest that you would like to perform with improved results at work, and now gradually make wise decisions to be able to do that, right? When I first started sharing the teachings of the Buddha many years ago, I'd never done it before, right? I understood the teachings myself, but I had never shared the teachings before. So I just started. And if you look at or you listen to some of the videos or the podcast that I did many years ago, it's not nearly what I'm doing today in terms of teaching, right? So you need to gradually tweak and tweak and tweak. And you just do that gradually to improve through making wiser and wiser decisions. But if you don't form your feelings based on what you're currently doing, now you can make wiser and wiser decisions. So it's a matter of working towards improved performance at work, not longing, yearning for it, not wanting it or expecting it, but also not being on the other side where you could care less and you're lackadaisical. Instead, you come to the middle where you understand you're a work in progress. You don't understand everything there is to know about the world right now. And now you just gradually make your wise decisions towards improvement, but without forming your feelings on where you're at. So let's just say you need to do a presentation at work. You prepare the best you can prepare, and you go into the presentation and you do the presentation. And then when you're done, you look at it and say, what could I have done better? What did I do well? Because I'd like to continue to do those things. And what did I not do so well? And now let me improve it. Don't feel guilty. You don't need to feel shameful or feel sad. It's just like, this is where I am right now. So let me just look at it. Let me analyze it. Let me evaluate it to be able to see what can I do to improve it. And now let me tweak it. And now let me make it better. So now 2 months from now, when you do that same presentation again, then you improve it and you make it a little bit better. But the guilt, the shame, the fear, that just gets in your way of being able to look at it objectively and be able to decide, what can I do to improve here, right? Back to the first question about your fear of money and losing money. The way that you eliminate this is you're going to need to practice generosity, because your mind's holding on and craving money, and it's holding on and craving money to be permanent. And understand it's at work that you're doing financial analysis and stuff, but even with your personal money, you're going to need to give and share. This is something that the mind doesn't usually do because it's holding on to things very tightly. So one of the things that the Buddha taught is generosity, that you give and share with the people around you, and that trains your mind to let go. Not just your money, but you can share your time, your effort, your energy, your resources. But, you would like to share money with people. And you need to do this from the middle way too, because if you did it excessively, you wouldn't have the money that you need to be able to support your life. But if you never share, your mind's going to be quite selfish and you're going to hold on to things very tight, right? So you'd like to come to the middle where what you'll notice is frequency is more important than the amount. So if it was a matter of giving $500 once a year to a children's orphanage or giving $1 a day, you will find that the $1 a day is actually going to be more helpful for your mind because it's having to let go, let go, let go. So each day you would like to be able to let go, let go. Here in Thailand, there's many donation boxes and like restaurants and stores and 7-Eleven and different places. You can put 10 baht, 10 baht, 20 baht, 20 baht. So over the course of the day, maybe you gave away 100 baht, which probably would be fine for you. And now you just, each day, you're having to let go maybe 5 or 10 times during your day. And you do that even when you go back home. There's probably donation boxes, places, and you can just let go each day. Just let go, let go, let go. This is going to help your mind to be able to let go of that craving for permanence with the money. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
My question is about my fear. Most of my fear is about human relationship. Like I am afraid of make conflict with other people. So that means I think my behavior is not myself. So how can I eliminate this kind of fear?
Okay, so you need to first understand the Four Noble Truths, that anything that someone chooses to do, that's a choice that they're making. You're not producing their anger. You're not producing their frustration. So conflict is part of life, meaning that there's going to be disagreement. There's only one person in the world that does things your way 100% of the time. Do you know who that person is? Yourself, right? You're the only one. So it's only a matter of time before you encounter someone who does things differently than you. That's normal. If you're doing things one way and this person's doing things a different way, and they get angry because you're not doing it their way, they're causing their own anger. Do you see that? Right? They're craving permanence, right? So now you understand that that is normal, that you're going to encounter that as long as you're around unenlightened beings. That's normal. But when you're around enlightened beings, you're not going to experience people becoming angry and frustrated with you. But probably the vast majority of the people in your life are probably unenlightened. So they're going to be angry and frustrated sometimes. And you just need to know that you are not causing it. And this is just impermanence. Sometimes they're going to be happy. Sometimes they're going to be sad. This is impermanence. And now when you experience that someone's angry and frustrated, you just understand that you're not causing that. And this is what's going on in their mind, and you can't fix it. All you can do is make wise decisions for your life. And if they choose to get angry or frustrated, that's a choice that they're making, and it's not coming from you.
But how other people make me very angry, but I don't know how to give them my feedback to be calm. But I don't think that's good for myself.
Other people aren't making you angry. It's your own mind that's causing that anger. That your mind is craving for them to do things a certain way. And you can only be happy if they do it that way. So I didn't spend the time to walk through the Four Noble Truths in the way that I typically do, but that's typically what I do. And you can learn from the recordings that I have, where you can deeply soak into your mind to be able to see the Four Noble Truths, that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Because as long as you think it's other people who are causing you to be angry, you'll never actually solve this. You're welcome. Okay. All right. I don't see any. Oh, we have some questions online here. 1 second. Looks like someone named Raven has a question. Go ahead. You can unmute your microphone and ask questions if you like. Okay, so they're not unmuting, but they have their question here in the text. So I will answer this. First, it's Karen. She says, how would you manage the fear of being lied to or cheated on by a significant other? So you're not managing your fear. Instead, what you're doing is you're eliminating it. So you need to eliminate the craving for everybody to tell you the truth. Some people are going to tell you the truth, and some people are going to lie. That's normal. My son, he lies to me all the time, right? He's 13 years old. And that's unfortunate that he does that. And he's learning more and more that that's unwise for him to do that. But there's going to be people that lie to you. And that's where you need to make the decision to not crave and long and yearn for everybody to do things a certain way. And then when you discover that someone's lied, that you understand that this is what they're choosing to do. But for you in making decisions, you don't believe the people around you. Instead, you always verify what it is that you see, that you don't allow your mind to just believe things, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. So the way that you eliminate this is don't have a craving, right? So this is where you can see the middle way, a little bit more of the middle way, that you're not interested in craving permanence, that your partner is always going to be faithful to you, right? You can't crave that. You can't expect it. You can't long and yearn for it. But you can't be on the other side too, where it's like when your partner is cheating on you, you're like, oh, well, this is just impermanence. I'm going to just kind of go through life and let people have sex with anybody they want to have sex with. That's unwise too, right? Because now you're getting sexually transmitted diseases. Now you're getting in fights and arguments. And now people are showing up at your house wanting to fight you and beat you up. So these are the two extremes, right? Where you hold on to this partner and say, I want this person to only be with me. Or on the other side is, I could care less who he's with. As long as he's home or she's home with me, it doesn't matter. There's a middle way where you realize that having just one partner is wise. And if your partner chooses to go out and have sex with someone else, then you train your mind to be able to understand that this could potentially be a relationship that you might decide to end. So the way to eliminate the fear of this is you can do the same thing that we talked about with mindfulness of death or reflection on death or the contemplation of death, is you can close your eyes and you can envision that this person has cheated on you. Maybe they have never cheated on you ever, but you have this fear that they will, because maybe it's happened in the past, or maybe it's just something that your mind is fearing. You can sit and convince your mind that this has actually happened and play it out. And now when your fears are rising, to cut that off and let it go. Okay. So we've got a whole bunch more questions here online as well. So here it says, I fear getting old or old age. Sometimes I feel I am too young, and sometimes I am too old, and I'm getting old fast. I feel there is too little time left, but I waste time a lot. I cannot see myself getting old, and I fear people seeing me old. So that's fear of people seeing you get old. That's coming from your personal existence view. So you're going to need to learn that. I taught this last week as part of chapter 16. So if you go back on our YouTube channel, since you're on, actually you're in Zoom, but if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to see the chapter 16 where I taught dissolving the ego. Ego serves no purpose. This is going to help you to eliminate personal existence view. You also see it in our book. If you download this from our website, you'll be able to see that, or order it on Amazon, or you can get a printed version of it, and you'll learn about how to eliminate the fear of people seeing you get old. It says, sorry, I am in a place. Oh, no worries, Raven. I understand. Let's see. We have a bunch of questions here on YouTube too. Let's see what we've got. All right. Let's see. I have a fear when I see my ex-boyfriend with his present wife, very cozy and romantic. I will not be able to accept because he never gave me the emotional security and social acceptance. So in this case, you need to just let go, right? You need to train your mind with the Eightfold Path. By you holding on to this ex-boyfriend, he's moved on, he's married. Your mind just needs to let go. And so I suggest you learn the Eightfold Path. So you can learn that from our resources that I share. Some people experience depression because of chemical imbalances in the brain. In such case, how can they train their mind to cope with depression? What you're going to learn if you deeply penetrate into these teachings is it's not chemicals that is causing depression. I know that this is what scientists say. I know this is what doctors say. I know you guys hear this stuff a lot, but it's not a chemical imbalance in the brain that is causing depression. It is the mind's cravings, desires, attachments. I was also diagnosed with depression at one point in my life. I don't have any of that stuff anymore because I trained my mind through the teachings of the Buddha. And that's the only way that you'll see this truth. Because right now you're reading books, you're listening to certain people who are in positions of authority. You might be watching movies and documentaries and seeing all this information, but you haven't really exposed yourself to this other better way of life that the Buddha taught. And when you train your mind through these teachings, you'll see that it's not chemical imbalances that is causing depression, that it's actually what's going on in the mind. And you can completely eliminate that. But you can't believe me, but don't believe other people either. Right now, you're just believing what you're seeing with these other resources. Instead, penetrate into the teachings of the Buddha, train your mind, and you'll see that you'll be able to get to complete peace and complete joy. It's a permanent mental state. And I think that's everything here. Yeah, that's everything. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to end by saying thank you for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. There's more opportunities for you guys to learn if you'd like. Tonight at 6:30 here, I'm going to be teaching loving kindness meditation. We'll be doing this together. It's a meditation session where at 6:30 tonight, I'll just guide you guys in a meditation session. Then I just open up to whatever questions you guys have. I don't teach a topic like this. Loving kindness meditation is to eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will, and all the lesser versions like frustration, agitation, and annoyance. You can essentially rewire your mind to be loving and kind to all the beings around you, as well as to yourself. Because oftentimes people don't have love and kindness for themselves. You might have this negative inner dialogue where you're angry or frustrated with yourself or diminishing and degrading yourself. So you can eliminate that through loving kindness meditation. And then tonight at 9 p.m., I'm going to be teaching the same topic again because I teach it at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. And then the next week, I have a course that you guys can see over there on the bulletin board, or you can see it on our website. It's called Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment, where you can learn all the foundational teachings. What I suggest people to do is start out with this first book, which is titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. You can actually get this on our website for free. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon. And this is the best place to start and gradually walk your way through developing this foundation to understand the path to enlightenment so that you can heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But what's hurting you is inside your own mind. It's not biological. It's not scientific. It's not anything with the body. You're a human being. You can evolve to a higher consciousness where your mind actually doesn't experience any of these discontent feelings, including fear. You don't need fear in your mind to actually make wise decisions. In fact, the fear is actually getting in your way of making wise decisions. So whatever you choose to do, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. And perhaps we'll see you next time. Take care. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.